So we have a lot of information to share with you, so we're going to try to get started. We have a lot of technical things going on at the moment, so thanks for bearing with us. I think I've met most of you before. My name is Elle Baker. I'm the open are we on? Which one do you want?
Underneath the podium, is that at the very, very bottom? And there's a box.
The very bottom.
Switch says on. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
We're live? Okay. Very good. So thanks everyone for coming. My name is Elle Baker. I'm the Open Space and Environmental Planner for the City of Revere. Really appreciate all of you taking the time out of your evening tonight to join us and learn more about this project that we've been working on for quite some time. It goes back to 2019, just before we all had to experience the pandemic. So been quite some time. And we're happy to have everyone here, so welcome aboard. A couple things logistic-wise. I'm going to advance this real quick. So if there's anyone that is interested in hearing this translated to Spanish, the Spanish channel is available on the Zoom link. So I just want to give everyone a few moments to connect to that. The instructions are listed here. So for this meeting, we're going to have live here in the room, and we also have Zoom availability, so we have a number of folks joining us from home, and Zoom interpretation is going to be available real time, so you'll hear us speaking and then pausing, so we haven't sort of lost our place, or maybe I might have, but I'm going to blame it on that, but we have to sort of give pause to allow for the real-time translator to go ahead with the translation. Okay.
So I don't know which camera they should be accessing, but
Okay. We're pausing for a moment.
yeah.
Does somebody have a joke? Anyone?
You mute the lights.
Just bear with us a moment. Or engage in your chit-chat with your neighbors that you might not have seen for a while.
I want to build something and cut anything.
Well, so this is it. So, oh, this is very so the Zoom is working here, right?
I know, the first 5 minutes really has to just go awry, completely awry, so it's okay, we're all, it's okay.
Okay. That makes sense. All right. Oh, I don't know. Yeah. Everything's set. All my stuff's cool.
test, test.
And now I'm you.
Test, test. Can the Zoom folks at home hear us?
I'm asking right.
Yes. Hooray! Thank you, Revere TV. So, all right, where do we leave off? Welcome everybody to join the meeting, and for all the Zoom callers, you can now hear us, which that's a small success story. And we're here to share all the information about what we've been working on for about the last 18 months or so on Gibson Park. So when I talk about Gibson Park, I don't just mean Gibson Park itself, because this project has expanded to 3 different parcels. So when we say the Gibson Park project, we mean Gibson Park, the former boatyard, which is known as Boatworks, and also the Mills Ave vegetated berm project. So I just want to wrap that all in, and I also want to give a shout out to elected officials that have joined us. We have Mark Silvestri, our Councilor at Large. Thank you for being here tonight. I also want to give a shout out to the administration that supported this project from the get-go when we started with the master plan. I also want to thank Tom Skoreski, Chief of Planning, who is my boss, who's been very supportive throughout all of this project, which sometimes is busy. So thank you for all your support as well and getting us here. Yes. Also want to introduce John Powers, our ward councilor. Thank you for being here as well. Moving on to logistics. Anybody in the room, the restrooms are downstairs. Most of us have already been here, but those of you who haven't, there's water at the back of the room. And I already spoke about everybody being available on Zoom, so I won't repeat that since we're all here. So, the Gibson Park project. Interpretation. I want to introduce our project team, which is large. So if you could all just stand up for a moment and give a wave when I introduce you. We have John McAllister from McAllister Marine Engineering. Some of you might recognize him. He's been working with us on this project since 2019 when we started the original master plan to talk about 19 acres of space and what can we do with this space that would be an improvement. So thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for being part of the project. We also have Sean Sanger here from Copley Wolf and Abigail Derrick, sorry about that. They've been with us, at least Sean's been here with us as well since the master plan, working on landscape architecture and all of the great features that we're going to show you this evening. Newer to the team, but also equally important, we have Design Lab. So we have Andrew, Rand, and Sam. And they are the architects that are working on reconfiguring the existing dilapidated boathouse. So I think you'll all be happy with what you see here tonight. We're really excited to share that with you as well. We have some other folks that have been working on the project, so we do have them listed here. We have LEC Environmental. They've been working with us on a number of items. They're not here tonight. We will probably have a separate meeting that talks a little bit more about some discoveries that we've had at the boatyard in regards to contaminated soils and things, but that will be a separate meeting because it's a meeting that can have a meeting of its own. So we'll talk about that separately. I also want to talk about some other things that are not going to be included in this meeting tonight. We're not going to talk about the roundabout. We're not going to talk about the new development that's just been built because that's out of the scope of this project. We're not going to talk about Wheelabrator, although I've been here with many of you talking about that before. And we're not really going to touch too much on the riverside drainage, but I will say that as part of one of the funding sources, new drainage system design for the riverside neighborhood is incorporated in the plan. We're not so far along with the proposal and the design that would have anything to share at this time, but know that that's on the horizon. Separate meeting for that as well. So, we are going to talk about everything that's included in Gibson Park. So we started with the master plan, and that took place in 2019. It was adopted by the City Council in 2020. And we have used this as our guiding light, if you will, in order to develop elements of the park. And then when we started to dig into the park, we started to realize, well, there's a lot more to it. We were able to acquire the boatyard back in 2020 at the tail end of the year. And with that, we're able to expand recreational opportunity to extend Gibson Park a little bit further. When we started to look at what the flooding situation was there, we realized we can't really do any flood mitigation or flood risk reduction on that particular parcel or in Gibson Park without considering Mills Avenue. So that's how one project wrapped in 3 different parcels, if you will, but they are all called the Gibson Park Project, and they all fit under one umbrella. So that's why maybe you haven't heard from us in a while, because we've been working through a number of elements having to do with permitting, which is very complicated. John will touch on it. We won't go too much into the weeds. If anybody wants to read the MIPA, the initial filing with MIPA, that is available on revere.org under projects and initiatives. So we've taken all of those comments and gone back into redesign an uncountable amount of times because there's many resource areas that overlap. So we're trying to work through all those challenges and still deliver the product that we spoke about here at this initial meeting. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to John, and he's going to get to share the good stuff.
Thank you very much, Elle. Good evening, everyone. Pleasure to see you all again, be back talking. So Elle had touched on we call it the Gibson Park Resiliency Project because that's kind of the anchor parcel, but it does pretty much take up this entire area. So you can see it's the 2 separate parcels and the western edge of Mills Ave along the Pines River. A lot of resources in the area, a lot of different activities, but we are doing our best to provide both public amenities through the park and through the facility, as well as provide stormwater management and flood protection to the neighborhood, which is badly needed. Okay. So just to show everyone a couple of drone photos of the area that we're looking at. So on the bottom you can see Gibson Park, kind of looking from the top of Gibson Park, looking south. The golf facilities will say this is the existing conditions, but you can see looking south on the area we'll be working in, and then on the top it shows the former boatworks site, as well as the section down on Mills Ave. Again, we'll be working along the western edge of Mills Ave to provide some of that shoreline protection. So, excuse me. The project history, I'm not going to go through all of that, but as Elle alluded to, it got birthed from the master plan. We got a lot of input from the public during that process. That was when we were first all working our way through Zoom and what the priorities were, what people wanted to see happen. So we tried to take those elements and develop it into a more holistic, more fleshed out design than what was just done in that conceptual. As you can see from some of the photos, and those of you that live it know very well, flooding from the river, just even sunny day flooding is a more persistent issue and more of a risk. So we need to learn how to address that. The major concerns that came along were that persistent flooding, lack of formal access to the water sheet. We know we didn't want to provide a boat launch or anything like that, but you should still be able to get public out to the Pines River. It's great rowing, great kayaking out there. So if we could provide that public access and making sure that Gibson Park, as it's redeveloped, has more of amenities to serve the city, people of all ages. So that's where we're going. That's how we've gotten to this place. There's a delay every time I click. I apologize. So a couple slides ago, Elle had showed the plan from the 2020 master plan. This is the more updated thing. So we've gone through a lot of iterations. Been working with the city rec department, Michael Hinojosa, on some of the priorities for that, but we also have some more additional input. So this is kind of the updated layout of what we're looking like for the 2 northern parcels, the 29 Thayer and Gibson Park. So one of the big aspects that remains is the multi-purpose field that'll be able to use for both soccer, different sports, baseball, softball, as well as lacrosse practices. We are maintaining, yes sir.
So, if I have a question, should I wait till the end, or should I ask them now?
You might get answered throughout,
Okay,
so if you don't.
so a multi-purpose field, it's a swamp. So is something going to be done to
Yes.
alleviate that
Yes.
problem?
Yes, I'm going to repeat it so that people can hear.
Gonna address that.
So the gentleman asked if the multi-purpose field it retains water too much, if something's going to be done to address that. We will get into that further on into the presentation. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So moving along, yeah, we are, and we'll get into that. I have actually a couple slides that show how we will do that. It's a great question, because that is a good consideration. Yes?
Do you have this overlaid of an actual map of this area?
I do, I don't. So the question was if we had an overlay of the actual map of the area. We don't have that in the presentation, but I do have that. We can perhaps show you that later. Yes?
Yep.
Okay. So we're going to keep 4 tennis courts, but we're relocating 2 of them to the south, actually part way on the 29 Thayer, the boatworks site, and part of it on the southern part of Gibson Park. We are stacking the other 2 courts to make room for access, so we can have, once the roundabout gets built, we can have access from there. And you can see, we're going to get into it later, the building's going to be rebuilt, totally redone. It's going to look great. We're going to have a nice waterfront deck, community space, and access to the water sheet through a gangway and some dock floats. So we think we're hitting kind of all of the big concerns that came out of it, and one of the ones that came up that wasn't during the master plan process, but during our subsequent activities that Elle alluded to that we can get into in further meetings is there is some historic contamination remnant from the boatworks property that needs to be addressed. So we will be addressing that. That's you can see that down here, but those soils will be remediated as part of the redevelopment process. But we're going to be providing protection from high tide flooding. We're going to have a redeveloped park, and we're going to create resiliency to protect the entire Riverside neighborhood. So to get into a little bit about the park, I'm going to pass it over to Sean Sanger from Copley Wolf.
Thank you, John. And I'm sure I've met a few of you, but they were in little teeny boxes, and we were doing Zoom calls 2 years ago, so they were really little, but we had some really amazing public meetings that were awesome, that really pulled that master plan together. So the good news is we've really stayed true to that master plan. Most, if not all, those elements have been incorporated into that plan. So what we're really excited about now is to be able to kind of take this next step to actually make the plan and that master planning process become real. So definitely one of the things we're doing as landscape architects, our focus is, in addition to the stormwater elements that John has mentioned, making sure that we've got a really enjoyable public open space that you guys can use more often than you do now, given some of the drainage issues and whatnot, so that we're going to be working on. So the park design, as I said, a lot of this has stayed true. We'll be adding a lot of new trees. We'll be keeping the meandering asphalt pathways so that you will have the ability to use the fields, but you will also be able to use the park itself. So when those fields are in use, there will be other spaces that will be open to the public. So once again, really trying to make this a very community-focused, neighborhood-focused open space. So just some of the images that we've got here obviously are keeping this fairly passive. And I'm going to just kind of point, so hopefully I'll do this. Here we go. This character will continue on. Likewise, we'll be introducing more seating, more trees. We're doing everything we can to keep the trees that are out there. Most of those will most likely be at the northern end of the site right now. As you can imagine, as we start to do grading and putting the new multi-purpose field in, we will lose some of those trees as it relates to the field. But that field is sized to be a full-size soccer field. And then we've also got the ability to rotate those fields, and you could have smaller kid fields as well, so they would run perpendicular to that. So once again, trying to keep that as flexible as possible. And then John did mention we are looking at areas particularly closer to the boathouse, where we will have overlooks and opportunities for people to get much closer to the water on raised platforms. And then likewise, some of the images you hear, we don't have like all the furniture kind of picked out yet, but once again, starting to look at a variety of seating opportunities for people to use. Sure.
Do you have a question about this soccer field? Are they going to put a fence up along the waterfront?
So we're working through the final detailing there, but you can imagine absolutely there's a concern with those balls absolutely going errant and into the water. And I apologize, I'm blurring the rules here, but the question was, would there be a fence along that water's edge? And yeah, absolutely, we're working through those details. We don't know what that looks like just yet, but that will continue to be developed. We're really what I would call more kind of in the concept schematic phase of the project right now. But as we go through detailing, that will all definitely be will be looked at. And then park design, I'm going to kind of work this with John, but definitely focusing on getting a really good soil profile and a turf surface on kind of obviously what most people would see, on a regular day-to-day basis, and once again really getting that set up for a variety of youth activities. But there's a lot more to that field with obviously what we're doing with the resiliency components of the project. And I'm going to let John talk a little bit about this, but this is all the hidden stuff that's going to be underneath that turf that will honestly do all of the drainage work that we're really looking to. But we're definitely working with them, getting that profile, getting done correctly, so that at the end of the day, we've got this amazing turf surface, and it is real turf. We went through this in numerous conversations with the permitting folks on the project to get turf, and it will be irrigated. So once again, we're trying to get this turf and this soil profile so that it will be as rugged and be able to use this as frequently as possible. Sure.
Will this be raised up higher?
Yeah, the question was, will the soccer field be raised up higher? There is a whole grading exercise. I'm going to let John get into a little bit more of the technical information there, but maybe that's a good segue for me to hand that off.
Thank you, Sean. So I want to get into, I know you had some questions about the field. You're right, there is very poor drainage, particularly in the northern part of Gibson Park. We noticed that where it retains water. So in order to develop a field, which you don't want to have is where it retains water, because every time it gets used, it just turns into a mud pit. We don't want to have that. So to redevelop this multi-purpose field, the idea is going to be we're going to over-excavate that entire rectangular footprint. I'm just going to go back a slide, 2 slides. We're going to over-excavate that entire footprint down several feet. So if you can see where it is. So it extends if you want to look, just for reference, the existing baseball field is about there, the baseball softball field. So it goes a lot further north.
That looks like it's in the marsh.
It is not. We've overlaid it and laid it out. You're absolutely right. For reference, the foul pole is about right here. So we will over-excavate that.
What does that mean?
We're going to dig it up. So we're going to take all the soil that's out there down about 4 or 5 feet. We're going to take.
Is that going to cause more water to come up?
What do you mean by that? The question was, what would that?
Coming off the top of the ground, I'd be going closer to the water table, so it's time to get a bigger swamp.
Yeah. So let me walk through the exercise.
Okay.
So we're going to excavate all that soil out. Right. We're going to cut it down 4 or 5 feet. We're going to put that soil over on the 29th layer temporarily. That material that's going to be going. And then what we're going to do is rebuild it up with different. Am I going the wrong way?
Yeah.
Isn't this back? Oh, okay. Sorry. We're going to rebuild it up. So first we're going to put in a layer of crushed stone. Okay? So you can see the top of our field will be up here. So we're down about 4 feet. We're going to put in 6 inches, 8 inches of crushed stone as a base. Then we're going to put in these chambers right here. These are plastic stormwater chambers. They're open bottom, so that it allows the water. They can store them as they need to when you get the surges, but once that's going down, it allows the water to penetrate back into the subgrade. So it's a more natural way of handling stormwater rather than just sending it out to the river. This is a good way to provide it, particularly at high tide, to provide that storage. So we're going to put in these chambers, cover them with a little bit of stone, and then I'm going to go, I'll get this by the end of the night, I apologize, go back up into it, and we're going to rebuild. Now we're going to create the subgrade for the field. So we're going to have along the perimeter more chambers, and then we're going to put in a sand base. So again, that's going to provide a flat surface as a buffer between the stone and the sand that creates it so you don't have soil migration or any problems going down into the stone. That's going to be your base. And then you're going to put in a good, you can see it Sean had the marker over here.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Yep.
We'll put in it'll be a mix, special soil design mix that'll have enough organics to allow the field to grow, but it's got enough permeability to allow the water to permeate through it, and it'll be graded. So your highest point will be in the middle of the field. So your highest point will be kind of right through there, and then it'll grade off like that, slowly pitched. It'll be imperceptible to the eye, but it'll be enough to get the water off the field so it doesn't stay in there. And it's within the tolerances of a soccer field and a lacrosse field. We have to double check that. But that idea is it keeps the surface usable, it moves the water where we want it to go, and it allows us, with that substructure as well, more offline storage. Yes, question.
Now, wouldn't that direct some of the water towards the tennis courts and more importantly the playground?
So the question was, wouldn't that direct some of the water towards the tennis courts and more of the playground? Yes, you're absolutely right, because again, as I mentioned, it's peaked in the middle. There is. But there will be, so Gibson Park, as you know it now, is going to look very different at the end. So we're going to have perimeter drainage. Which way am I going? Come on. There we go. I probably clicked too much. These perimeter drainage lines will be along the edge of that as a first interceptor trench. And then we'll have more, or actually I'll get into it in the next slide, more aesthetically pleasing stormwater controls as well. But yes, we will be, as we're rebuilding the field, we're going to be making sure that all stormwater is managed and closed recharged. So again, this is in a very coastal area, very sensitive with natural resources, so we've got to be careful and cognizant of what we're doing with the stormwater, how we manage it, where we treat with it. The best thing to do is treat it closest to its source, treating any impervious runoff, so any pavement, because that's where you have oils and salts and stuff like that that could impact the river. So we're going to treat that. So near the impervious areas, parking lots and tennis courts and stuff like that, we're going to be putting in these rain gardens. So it's the same thing where we're going to dig down. For these ones, it's 2 to 3 feet, depending on the soil table, and you put it in, again, crushed stone at the bottom with a perforated pipe, and you build it up with a planting medium, we call it, a soil medium, that will support plants, but it also is permeable enough to allow the water to infiltrate through that. And those will be connected to a traditional catch basin and pipe network. But that'll provide the treatment. The plants, their roots uptake any bacteria or any metals that are in it, and they treat the first flush, it's called. He had his hand up first. Yes,
What's
sir.
the annual cost of maintaining all this additional plant?
So the question was, what's the annual cost for maintaining all the plant? When we were putting that together, it's going to be, we have to have an operation and maintenance plans when we submit the permit packages, and one of those aspects we have is to quantify how much it costs annually. I don't have that right now, but we will have it in our submittal coming up. You had a question, sir?
With these plants, do we think about things like butterfly gardens?
So the question was, with these plants, can we think about butterfly gardens? And I'm going to turn my head to Sean, because that's well out of my area of expertise.
Kind of off the wall.
No, absolutely. That's a really good question. And the beauty of those, in addition to the ability to take that water up and help purify that water and improve the water quality, is it does create habitat and pollinator gardens. All of those plants are a part of that, kind of that plant palette. So whether it's bees, butterflies, food sources, all of that stuff absolutely it would be a part of that. It's just one of the kind of the bonuses, if you will, I think, that you get as a part of that that community.
Can we, instead of targeting bees, can we target
Oh yeah,
butterflies?
absolutely. Yeah, a lot of those same plants and the flowers and the nectar are going to be really, bees, butterflies alike are going to be really interested in that. But yeah, absolutely. He said yes.
Yes, sir.
I'm reading a little forward. It says installed dual-size pumps. Is there going to be like a pump station down there?
Yes, so I'm going to take me 4 hours to get back to the right slide again. On 29th, so the question was about the pump station. We noted that there's going to be a dual pump system. So over here in the corner on 29th Thayer, we're going to have, because you can't get there by gravity, because we're going to be taking some more, because this is the highest point of the area, we're going to have to pump up to get to that subgrade. And how we're going to handle that, because you're going to have your average storms that have very low flows, and you're going to have some really big storms that create a lot of runoff. So you want to have 2 pumps just as a backup. That's like good standard practice. So we're going to have 2 low flow pumps, and we're going to have 2 high flow pumps. So that way, when the low flow pumps get overwhelmed, the high flow pumps can turn on and discharge into there. So that'll be located right around here in the corner of pretty much Thayer and Hayes, near where the existing access is currently.
Okay, I'm just going to pause for a second. So we were initially going to take questions at the end, so we do have some questions from the Zoom line, so we're just going to pause for a moment and take some of those questions. And then we're going to pause questions until the end, because it's some of the things you might be addressing as we continue through. So Daria, would you mind letting us know what you have for questions in the chat?
3. The first is the berm they're installing along the shoreline, I think it should say, does the berm they're installing along the shoreline restrict or eliminate our ability to launch our dinghies to our boats on the moorings? Many of us on mills have access points currently and use dinghies to reach our boats more than the next river.
So the question was, does the berm, will the berm limit our access for the current access points for dinghies, docks, people that launch to get out to their vessels that are moored in the Pines River? So yes, that is, we are going to get into that a little bit later on, but yes, that is a valid concern. One of the things that's come through with through the regulatory process is that we need to minimize those access points. So I do have a slide later on that shows what the revised access points will be. We'll get into that, but again, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, so I will jump into that one a couple slides down.
So you're going to minimize the access points?
So I'll get the question was, we're going to minimize. There's only going to be 1 access point at grade. There will be other access points, but this one will be 1 at grade.
So we get to use less of the river. Okay.
The next question is, will the field also have baseball?
So the question was, will the field also have baseball? Yes, that's why it's called a multi-purpose field. We're going to try and maximize sports, and that'll be for the recreation department to decide. But yes, that is intended for that purpose.
Okay. It's only those 2, actually.
Okay. So I think now we're going to hold questions to the end, because we are going to get into a lot of this stuff further down the line. So, I just want to talk about how we're going to be handling the stormwater to provide this offline storage. So as you know, right now, all the outfalls where the stormwater currently discharges are tidally influenced, meaning that at high tide, the water cannot discharge and it backs up into the system, and that's what can exacerbate some of the flooding, particularly along Mills and Thayer Ave. So how we're going to be addressing that is by having that pump system and having that offline storage through the chambers, so that when the outfall is submerged, we're going to put at least for the one at Gibson Park, we're going to put a check valve so the tide can't come back up into the pipe, and we're going to pump that water up into those subsurface chambers, and then if it's a really big storm or there is a large volume, they'll be able to redischarge after the tide drops down and the outfall is exposed. They'll be able to follow its natural course. But this way, it prevents the flooding from the neighborhood and it captures it underneath the field. So that is one of the key features of this, so that we're not making problems worse for the neighborhood. So now I want to show, kind of working our way south. This is what the boatworks site is going to look like. So Gibson Park is up here. You have Mills Ave to the left of the screen. But this is kind of an aerial view. So you can see where we've expanded parking down from Gibson Park. We're going to have it along this side. One of the pieces of feedback we got during the master planning process was that we did not want primary access through the Riverside neighborhood. The cars were already going too fast. So we are going to maintain access through here, but it's only going to be for emergency services. So there'll be some bollards or something, so fire department can have access through that. But once the roundabout is fixed, the primary access into the park will be through that roundabout facility. Community garden area will be relocated just to the south of the multi-purpose field, as well as the 2 tennis courts. And then we're going to get into it a little bit further on, but you can see the building is going to be completely redone. It's going to be a great asset for the neighborhood. It will be elevated up so we can have flow through. Because it's within the flood zone, there's certain characteristics that it has to meet. So that's why you can see we have those ramps over here that go up. So you can actually, this side will be boat storage, and this will be the community space. And so we're going to have accessible ramps up into both of those areas. And we're going to have kind of more of a passive recreational space, along with opportunities for folks, residents, to store kayaks and canoes, and opportunities, because we are going to be displacing some of the access points, so they can create new access points to use this facility. This is a perspective from the other way. Now you're looking from the Pines River north, looking north-southwest. Coming out from the redesigned building, you can see we're going to have this great elevated deck with a ramp up that you can walk up, access from Gibson Park. You can also access it from the parking area, and then we'll have a gangway down with some low-profile floats that'll allow for public access of launching non-motorized vessels like kayaks, sculls, and canoes and stuff like that. We think it's going to be a great asset. It's going to be integrated in with that. We'll have a sheet pile wall that actually continues our elevation for our storm flood surge protection, but you won't even be able to see it because the majority of it will be underneath the deck, and then it ties in. You can see this is the start of our berm. Actually starts a little bit over here. So with that, I believe it is time to get into the details of the boathouse facility, and I'll pass it to Andrew.
Hey everyone, I'm Andrew Brooks. I'm a director at Design Lab Architects. With me today is the rest of the Design Lab team, Rand and Sam. We also have a much more extensive engineering team outside of these engineers who are helping us with the structure and the plumbing and electricity and everything like that. But just briefly about Design Lab, we specialize in community buildings and also buildings that require resiliency upgrades. So this is a perfect project for us. We're super excited about it. We also kind of love sailing and rowing, so it couldn't really be more perfect for us. But to get into the building, we are proposing to demolish the CMU section of the building. That is the section that does not have the gabled roof on it. It has the flat roof. And we will be rebuilding that section in the same square footage, but it will be a bit longer. Right now, you cannot fit an 8-person crew boat in that. It's not long enough. So we are proposing to build it long enough to fit an 8-person boat and store, and that will allow us to more efficiently store those boats, and that section will be the boat storage section. We are, after kind of studying the building a lot more, we are proposing some other demo than what was in the previous master plan. We were looking at the exterior brick facade, and that facade is not structural. It's just holding itself up, and it's severely damaged by all of the flooding and rain and the deferred maintenance is what we call it. But in order to kind of bring those walls back up to a standard that would kind of support this building in the long run, it would be significantly more costly to maintain that brick. So we're proposing to remove the 3 walls of the gabled building, but keep the existing steel structure. We think that steel structure is kind of integral to the integrity of this building. It's quite beautiful, and it's in relatively good shape for what it's been withstanding over the last 20 or so years. We are proposing to keep the interior brick wall. We do want to maintain the brick somewhere in this building, and that interior brick wall is in really good shape because it's been indoors this entire time. And that will create some great character within this building. I'm not sure how many people have actually been inside, but it is a rather beautiful building that has a lot of artifacts within it that we're proposing to maintain. Some of those we're not proposing to maintain, like the existing lighting, as well as the box fans hanging from the ceiling. But you can see in this view, You can see the brick wall that we're proposing to maintain. There is existing glass that we'll be removing, but we'll be installing new windows. There'll be a different material, and they'll be a bit thicker, but we are studying and maintaining the rhythm of that leaded glass system that already exists. We are going to keep the wood decking to the best extent we can. And of course, the wood joists and the steel trusses will remain. There will be some additional steel within this, but it will be expressed differently, and it won't be made to look like this steel. So you can clearly see the history of this building. This is another view. This is looking at the exterior wall, so looking at Thayer Ave from the inside. That brick wall we're proposing to remove, as well as those windows and the sills and the lighting, and kind of everything that is considered a room in this building will be removed, and the new design will be put in place. But of course, we'll still be keeping the wood decking, the wood joists, and the steel trusses. And there are a few smaller elements here, like the rails for the huge doors that we'd like to keep. Those are hanging off the structure, so they're not attached to the brick. So we're going to try and keep stuff like that. There are also some hooks, some boat hooks and stuff that we'd like to keep. It will really add to the character. Regarding the interior layout, this building will act as two programs. It will be a community space for everyone to enjoy, to have meetings like this, exactly meetings like this actually. It will also be run by a vendor for crew boats, and that's why we are proposing to build a boat storage facility on the side of the building. We have discussed with vendors who operate other buildings what they kind of need. Sam is also a prevalent rower. He'll be at the head of the Charles. And so we understand what these buildings need, and that we've been asked to include a workshop type space, as well as storage for a certain number of boats and oars and life jackets and stuff like that, as well as some community items like chairs and tables. And we're able to fit pretty much all of that in. So you can see here the boat storage is that entire space on page north. We can store 8-person boats. That's representative of that top boat. And there will be access on either side of this building in both spaces. And there will also be shared restrooms for both the community space and as well as for the park. So all the restrooms in this facility will be used by the park. And right now we're accounting for 2 toilets in each room. We're talking about raising that up some more because this will be well used, and we have the space to do it. You also see there's space for, this is I believe 90 chairs, so there's space for 90 people to sit here, and there's probably space for more as well. And then we'll be able to move all of these chairs out into the storage room, and you can put workout equipment down. So the floor will be a resilient floor, a rubber flooring, and you'll be able to move stuff around and sweat on it and clean it up really easily. So there's just some interior views. These are all kind of iterative. Again, we're at kind of at an early stage of design. We just finished schematic design, and so these are kind of proof of concepts that we can fit the requested number of people, we can fit the requested number of toilets, and the offices and the storage spaces. So this is looking back towards the bathroom, so looking towards kind of Thayer Ave, and then these windows look out onto Thayer Ave as well. There will be storage on either side of the bathrooms, and the office will be able to look out into the rest of the room. Which, I hope I didn't skip a slide there. Well, moving on to the exterior of the building, We are proposing kind of 3 layers of transparency. If you think of a normal window as fully transparent and a wall as opaque, we're going to have a 3rd level of transparency, which we're calling translucent. And that is something that will let light through, but you'll really only be able to see shadows through it. This is a material that we're really excited about, and we are proposing that on the kind of boat storage side, which is facing the rest of Gibson Park. It will act as kind of a beacon. It will be a bit brighter potentially, and you'll be able to know kind of where the bathrooms are and act as potentially an entry to the park. And so this is our exterior design. So the windows facing Thayer Ave, those will be in a more opaque and more solid wall, which is facing the residential side, of course. So it's not totally open to the residential side, and there will also be shades on the windows to close that off if necessary. Copley Wolf, Sean is doing the ramps and the deck, but the entry points we've determined are to bring boats all the way up into the boat storage. So it's quite tedious to bring an 8-person boat. So we tried to get direct access up to the boat storage and then access directly out onto the dock. And then there's direct access to the bathrooms and to I have a laser pointer, to the bathrooms and then to the community room right in the center of the space. And there'll be separate ramps with like planter boxes separating those. And then we have all of our mechanical equipment will be on the roof of the boat storage facility, and that will all be screened off, so you won't be able to see that from anywhere, especially from the park. That's where the highest part of the screen will be. You can kind of see that screen here, and that gray box is representative of what the mechanical equipment might look like, or how big it might be. It might be bigger, it might be smaller, but you won't be able to see it either way. From the other side, so this is looking from the waterfront side, the building is a bit more open to the park, and that's blue is representative of that translucent material. You'll see renderings in a moment of that. I know I'm talking about it. You'll also notice that we are raising the slab of this building up, so there'll be space below this building for water to flow. That is required by code and all of the regulators. And that gives us the ability to kind of land right onto the deck as well. So it's a smooth transition between. You'll also see there's 2 bifold doors on this side, and there was one on the other side. So those doors will be able to open up entirely to both sides of the building to either let air in or have views out to the waterfront. So this is a view from Thayer Ave of the new design. You can see the more opaque facade material. Right now it's representative of a metal panel, but we are still studying what that material could be. Again, design is very iterative. There are many variables at play, including cost, but you can see the windows, and as well as that translucent material on the front sides of this building. And you can see under the building as well to allow water to flow freely through. And then the back side, this is again looking from the waterfront. That opaque material kind of gives way to the more translucent material, and then you can see the screen here screening all of the mechanical equipment. And that's it for the building, and I'll hand it back to John.
All right, so thank you, everyone. So now we're going to start looking at Mills Ave and how we're going to be, again, working our way south, how that's going to be protected. So if this perspective is actually looking at Mills Ave, looking up to the north. So as you can see, right over here, that's the start of our vegetated berm. So as I had mentioned previously, and we'll get into a little more detail in the next couple slides, the only grade access point will actually be right at Mills and Thayer where it is now. And what we're going to do is we're going to square that off. We're going to have a concrete end wall on the south side, and on the north side we're going to put an H-pile at the edge of the sheet pile wall. So that way, in advance of a predicted storm surge or a flood event, DPW can go out and put out what we're referring to as deployable flashboards. They're essentially stackable interlocking boards. They have a similar system. I think they just use timber though over on the Revere Beach side. But that would be for this access point. And then as we work, I'm going to talk about how we can work further to the south, but also just kind of wanted to show you profile-wise, everything's going to be elevated up and along this deck, and we'll have the gangway down to the floats that gets out onto the water. There we go. Oh, one too much. Are we going to go back? I got itchy trigger finger tonight. I apologize. So just to show perspective for everybody, again, if you live in the neighborhood, you're probably very familiar with it, but high tide flooding, storm surge is a problem for the area. It's very low lying. Elevations are from 6.4 up to just below 10. The only part of the Riverside neighborhood that's actually above the floodplain elevation is the diamond on Gibson Park at the existing field. So something needs to happen because sea levels are getting up, and this increase is just becoming more frequent. So I like this one over here just because you have the guardrail gives a good visual indication. That's roughly speaking about the height of the berm that we're looking to put in. So you can see from this storm right before Christmas, this berm would provide protection and keep that out of the neighborhood. But just to show, again, you guys are probably very well aware of it, but it's just good to show why this is being done. So this is to give some perspective of again, what we're trying to do. The existing thing is that guardrail sits there. It doesn't provide any protection from rising waters coming through, so the water can build up. And that's our design elevation, this 2030 10-year flood elevation. It's elevation 10.3, so it gets it out of the floodplain. And whereas the water now can come in through here, get into the yards. In the proposed schematic, which is this one down here, you can see it would be blocked out and wouldn't get into the neighborhood. So an important thing to note, as these are stacked on top of it, the paved width of Mills Ave would be reduced. Right now it's variable, about 26 to 28 feet. It would be a 22-foot with paved roadway width, so you'd have two 11-foot lanes, which is pretty standard for that speed level, that level of use for a roadway. But that's the minimum. We wouldn't go any less than that. So we are going to be reducing, looking at the positive side of it, reducing impervious coverage by 4 feet, and that'll allow us to get a little more room to build this this structure. So just the side by side, again, this is kind of just an AI generated what it would look like, but you know, that's perspective looking south from 29th Thayer, and that's kind of what it would look like with some native seagrasses. All right, so let's get into the access points, because I know that question came up and we had another comment. We originally had designed it, and this has been through an iterative process, as I was saying, we've been working on this for a good 18 months. We originally had it designed where we had maintained all of the existing access points. I think there's actually 11 if you go north to south along it, and we were going to square those off, again, with concrete wing walls, because you need a square geometry, like to actually get the flashboards in so they don't leak and seal through. So you'd have to reconstruct that whole geometry and have those boards. But through the regulatory process, a lot of the feedback we got was that that would not be allowable under the permitting regulations. It relied too much on human input where, DPW would have to get out in advance of the storm, and if there's 11 access points to deploy 11 flashboards of variable widths, because some of them are 4 feet, some would be 8 feet. They thought that was too much of a risk, given all the resources in the area. They did not want to have that. So we're going to have the one at-grade access point. So this is if you are standing at low tide at the Pines River, looking up, that's Thayer, and this is Mills right through here. So this is what it looks like, and it's a section through it, so that's into the subgrade. But essentially, you're going to have the end of the sheet pile wall is this northern part. It's going to be an H pile wall, and then we're going to have this one concrete wing wall, and you'll have the berm here. So just to give a little perspective on what the berm would look like on the downslope side, up to about elevation 9, we would have cobbles and stones to match what's out on some of the sections along there. I know there's a lot of riprap as well. And then above that, it would be vegetative with native coastal plantings. We do it with plugs to get it established quickly, but it wouldn't be anything too high growing that would have any visual effects. You'd still be able to see over it. And then over on here, this is just kind of a rendering of what it would look like along the access points. So one thing I want to point out is as we're cutting in to reduce the width of Mills Ave, to prevent any issues with plows or cars impacting the berm, we are going to put in curbing on the inside edge to protect that berm, and then build up from that. So it's going to be a variable width as well. It's kind of depending on where the grades are around it, but our 10.3 is that 20, 30, 10-year event that we're trying to imagine. But again, to give you a sense of perspective, it's roughly the height of the guardrail that's out there now. So for those access points, we can only have one at grade. So because we do realize, and this was a point we had discussions with on the regulators, that there are people that do have docks, they have moorings out there, they have kayaks. We still need to maintain that access, but they want to have a continuous berm. So we're proposing it'll be the same shape as the berm, but it would be, we're calling them maintenance points. They'll be reinforced, so there won't be any vegetation that we have to worry about it getting trampled or causing, destroying the integrity of the berm. It'll probably be some sort of crushed stone, something that packs well, but that holds together, that would be allowed access over it and to get down to the downstream slope. We negotiated pretty significantly on that, and that was just a bridge too far for the regulators. So, but we will have those three access points at key points along the section. If you kind of look, it's 2,400 feet, so we're probably not going to be exactly every 800, but we do have it roughly spaced out along the section. So just talking about, well, how did this come up? There are a significant number of environmental resources in the area that predict what we can and can't do and what we have to comply with. The most significant is the Rumney Marsh Area of Critical Environmental Concern, which goes up to the edge of Mills Ave and covers all of Gibson Park and 29 Thayer. But then there is land under the ocean, there's coastal beach, coastal dunes. The whole Riverside neighborhood is technically a barrier beach. So that has its own set of regulations and considerations. There's land containing shellfish, fish runs. We have salt marsh. There's a lot of resources out there, which is an asset, obviously. I mean, that's what's great, and that's why you do want to get on the water sheet and experience it. But it makes it there's a lot of regulations that need to be met. So this is just to give you an idea, and we've been having these conversations for the past several over a year and a half, I would say, with different regulators. But we will locally have to get permits from the Revere Conservation Commission. We will need an order of conditions. Some of you may have been aware we did a abbreviated notice resource area delineation just to secure where the resources are and what's out there. That was done recently. That ORAD was issued, that we have that through the Revere Conservation Commission. But then now we are in the MEPA process. We've already done our ENF, Environmental Notification Form. We're going to be filing a draft environmental impact report coming up, and we will obviously post that on the city's website. You'll have access. You'll be able to comment on it. if you guys are all interested, we have the link later, but you will have the chance to comment. You can provide that through that public process, and nothing's final. We'll get all those comments in from all the regulators, and we will submit a final environmental impact report under the MEPA process, and that is just to get a secretary certificate to show our permitting pathway forward. So it's a bit of a slog that we have to get through, but we'll do it. Then we'll be filing with Mass Department of Environmental Protection the order of conditions that we file with Revere. It's actually filed simultaneously with Mass DEP. They'll give some inputs if they have any comments on it. Water quality certification we may need depending on any impacts we have below the mean high water line. Currently, we're not proposing any, but we have that just in there. We've already had some consultations with them. We will need a Chapter 91 license. For those of you who don't know, that's the Public Waterfronts Act. It just allows use of filled or flowed tidelands. You need to have a license, so we would need that for the waterfront structure at 29th Thayer. There's an existing one. We'd getting a new license for what's already out there. And then the Uniform Hazard of Waste Manifest, that's for impacted soils, which would be at 29th Thayer when we deal with those to make sure they're properly categorized, assessed, and disposed of in a proper location. So under the Army Corps of Engineers, that's a federal permit. We'll be under the Rivers and Harbors Act and the Clean Water Act. We'll be getting a permit through them for some of that work. Those are these two. And then under FEMA, if they should determine, we would need a floodplain determination. And lastly, under the EPA. So we will be doing some cleanup work. The remediation will be under EPA as well. But the entire construction project will also fall under a called a NIPDES permit, National Pollution Discharge Elimination Service. That's just to make sure that the construction impacts aren't impacting the resource areas that are surrounding it, as well as tracking out mud and causing other issues within the neighborhood. So construction is a concern. We realize that's obviously, especially for people living in the neighborhood, that's going to be a major impact. Yes, sir, Mr. Powers.
Excuse me. My understanding, and I know there are some, but are they on the outfall pipes? Are they on the end of each street? Are they going out?
So the question was about the outfall pipes along Mills Avenue?
No, coming on under Mills Avenue.
Yeah, the ones that are coming under Mills Avenue. So that Elle alluded to previously, that is not currently part of the scope. I think the city's going to be issuing an RFP for that work going forward. That is part of the process, but it's not part of this exact project, so I can't speak to that.
And I would imagine that would be done prior to.
So the question was, would that be done prior? Yes, that would be done in coordination with the berm. Yeah, absolutely. It's all part of that process. It makes the most sense to do it simultaneously. Because, again, go to construction impacts, you don't want to be working in the street twice or digging up things that you just put in. So that's a very, very astute observation. So I know people are going to understand, based on some of the feedback we've had already, how is construction vehicle traffic going to impact us? Well, unfortunately, I think really the only way in and out is through Mills Ave coming off of 1A off North Shore Road. So we will put in the specifications that they must follow the city regulations. We've already had a couple on hours of operations, speed limits, how they can move materials in and out. And we think it's going to be about 18 months to do the work, but that's going to really depend on timing, because some of the stuff is seasonal on the work that we can be done. But they're going to be staging out of the Boatworks property, meaning when I say staging, that means that's going to be their temporary work zone. So they'll be parking inside that gated area. We won't allow them to be parking at the park. However, it must be understood that for a while the park's not going to be usable for certain sections while they're working. Like when they're digging up the field, there's obviously not going to be able to play on the field, so that'll have to be temporarily fenced off and restricted. But the northern part, where there's the least amount of activities, that'll still be accessible for passive recreation, for the golfing activities, stuff like that. But we will make sure that in the specifications that the contractor that is bidding on the project is aware of that it's working in a residential neighborhood, that they can't be working too early. They'll need special permission if they want to work weekends, items like that. speed limits, and we talked, there's even a possibility, I've done it on certain projects, where we could have a community liaison. They would have to, in their proposal, they'd have to nominate a community liaison if there are issues that come up. Obviously the first point of contact would be through the city, but if it's persistent issues with a contractor, they would have to designate somebody that would liaise with the community. Yes?
Will the children's park be accessible?
So the question was, will the children's park be accessible? Yes. So there's no changes being proposed there, so we're going to have to fence it out. There's some logistics, but yes, and it will be.
So there'll be parking in the parking lot, right?
So the parking in Gibson Park will be accessible, yes. That's why all the construction activity will be at 29 Thayer for their parking.
So we will try to leave as many spaces open as possible. That's safe to do so. So there might be times in which it might need to be closed if we need an access point to go by it or otherwise, but we will try to obviously keep as many spaces, open space and recreational spaces open as much as.
I know a lot of parents are
Safety
going
allows.
to drive there because we don't have a access point to actually walk across
Right.
safely.
Yeah, so the question was, she knows that there's a lot of parents that have to drive there because there's not a safe access point. So yeah, we will, again, that'll be part of the plan package, yeah, from the Point of Pines area. That'll be part of the package that they need to maintain access, or if there's going to be closed off, we will have a lot of public advance notice for that. So I think, yeah, now we're open for discussion, so let's let them. Yes, sir.
I have a couple of questions. The pump houses that are going to be on the corner of Hayes and Thayer,
Yes.
soon, what is the noise level of that? And what's being done to assure that people who live across the street from it aren't going to be woken up?
Sure. So the question was about the pump chambers that are at the corner of Hayes and Thayer. What's the noise level, and what about impacts to the people that are living in the neighborhood? So those will all be subterranean pump chambers. So they'll be in a well. They'll be below grade, so you wouldn't actually see them or hear them. They'll be the pumps themselves, the housings are insulated. So I don't anticipate really any noise impacts from them. You probably wouldn't even know they're going on. I mean, if you think about it, it's a common technology. I know here we have sewer, but septic systems have that all the time, and you'd never hear a septic system that goes on. I know the large system has a bigger pump, so you might hear that, but at that point it's probably because it's raining buckets that you would be drowned out by the buckets.
Okay, so has pickleball been ruled out?
So the question was, has pickleball been ruled out? Yes, I believe we discussed that with Michael Hinola, saying yes, pickleball is not in the current plan.
Okay, and then you said access from Thayer Avenue would be only by fire department or emergencies. How's that controlled?
So the question was, how would the access from Thayer would be only for emergency vehicles? How is that controlled? So we would have steel bollards, pipe bollards, put in place where it would either be the fire department would have access. They'd be kind of locked in. It's kind of what you see a lot in pedestrian zones or loading zones.
Okay. And then people going to the boatyard, are they going to be, the only place they'll be able to park is in the Gibson playground parking lot that'll be off the roundabout. Is that correct assumption?
So the question was, for the parking for the boathouse, they'll only be able to access through Gibson Park, and that is correct. There'll be no parking through you're concerned about parking in the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the goal is to drive all vehicle access through the roundabout in through Gibson Park, and so that's why we've expanded parking on 29 Thayer. I think there's additional 30-something parking spaces that we're adding as part of that. But yes, so all vehicle traffic will be encouraged through there.
Okay. Can you describe what the Thayer-facing side of the boathouse is going to look like? What is it?
So the question was
The boathouse. What
Yeah.
we're going to look at, if I'm standing on Thayer Avenue and I'm looking at that boathouse, what am I looking at? What's it look like?
So that is,
Some sort of opaque.
yeah.
I don't know if you want to try to get back to it. Yeah, no problem.
I understand what opaque is.
So we are proposing to, sorry, I'm stalling, to maintain the location of the existing windows. So there will be large windows with a similar leaded pattern in them potentially. And then right now we're looking at a standing seam metal panel, which
What does that mean? I know what a metal panel is, but like, is it white? Is it gray? Is it?
we haven't selected a color yet. We're not even entirely sure on metal panel or like the size of the panels or whether it's standing seam or reveal. We're leaning towards metal because it's a more natural material actually, and it is quite resilient, and it will also patina over time, and so it will kind of be representative of its location. But in terms of actual like detailed looks, we haven't gotten that far in design. We've really been discussing the translucency of all the walls, obviously, and as well as the location of the doors and windows, but more generally discussing materials at this point in design.
Okay, and is it anticipated that this, I think beyond those windows is an open hall, like for meetings like this, is that
Yeah.
what you're talking about? And is it anticipated that that would be rented out for functions? So there could be, a wedding in there with noise and music, and what are we looking at there?
So there is potential for a community to utilize the space. At this point, it hasn't been exactly determined what type of functions would be allowed there. Would definitely be allowed community meetings and such. I can hear your concern about if anything was too loud or noisy. I think anything that would be allowed there would have to be respective of the neighborhood. We're not far enough along to figure out exact uses of that at the moment.
There's no thought about sound coming through that metal wall and those windows if there were I mean, we live on the river.
Right.
When there's a party at the wharf,
Yeah.
we hear the music.
I understand that.
Almost a mile away.
I know.
We have to be cognizant of
I have the same situation where I live as well, where oftentimes people say, oh, nobody can hear us. You can hear every conversation from my house that people are having on the beach. So I understand and I respect what you're saying. Good point. And we're going to talk about soundproof from architectural standpoint. Here we go.
When all the doors are closed and in this building, I don't anticipate you'll be able to hear anything like this meeting. I mean, the building will be brought up to all the new energy codes. The insulation will be significantly thicker than what you're used to. So I don't anticipate you'll be able to hear something like this going on. And we won't be setting this up probably for concerts or anything, so there won't be a really loud moment, I believe.
So I have one more question. This year, for the first time that I can remember, we had numerous combined sewer overflow issues with polluting the river, and from linen and sawdust. Not from well, maybe from Revere too. So, does this plan do anything to help with that?
So the question was that you've had, especially this year, more combined sewer overflow incidents from all over. So the only sewerage that's being addressed is through the building, which doesn't address a lot, but that will have a backflow preventer on it so that there is no double swing check valve, so you don't get sewerage going back up. But a CSO event, a combined sewer overflow event, is a different thing. I don't even know where the sewer outfall is. I think the sewer outfall is in Point of Pines, isn't it, for over there?
Point of Pine Pump Station.
Point of Pine Pump Station, yeah. Yeah. So that is, we're not addressing sewerage in this part of the work.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just want to pause for 1 second.
Yeah.
I know there's other questions in the room, so I want to give people a chance. And I think Daria might have some folks on the phone. So we'll take a couple questions from Zoom, and then we'll go back to the gentleman in the back. I know you've had your hand raised as well. And also, the two of you both had your hand raised. Go ahead, Daria.
I think there's two on Zoom. One's a quick one. When will the last growing season for the community garden be before it moves to the new location?
So the question was, when will the last growing season be for the community garden before it's moved to the new location?
At this point, we don't have a construction timeline, so at this point, it would be premature to set any expectations about that.
And the other Zoom question, I will paraphrase, but concern about the the regulators who made a change with the access points, and also concern that regulations prevented more access, and at the same time, it was too much for DPW. Who can we speak with to address this change?
Can you say that one more time? I'm not sure. I hear, this is what I hear, that the question is about reduction in access points due to regulatory restrictions. That we started off, like, as John alluded to, with, I believe, 8 to 10 access points using the flashboards. The regulators are not supportive of using concrete in this space. That's one of the reasons. Second reason is they feel that it doesn't necessarily reduce the risk as much as it possibly could for the residents that are living in the neighborhood, because one, it's a maintenance concern that it would have to be deployed on the eve of a storm or the day before, a week before. I mean, we pretty much have our weather alerts, so we could do it in advance. But also, it also creates more opportunity for scouring, which means, so we'd basically have vegetation for a certain length, and then we have concrete, and then as the water comes up and goes back and comes up and comes back, it can erode and impact the integrity of the berm. And the more openings we have, the less resilient that berm is going to be in order to reduce flood risk for the neighborhood. So I think that might be part one of your question. And what's the second part?
I think, is there someone that this person could follow up with if they have more concerns?
Yes, they can. If you have concerns, you can feel free to email me at ebaker@revere.org. We will field questions through this meeting, and then there'll be a period of time that we can respond to questions as well. Thank you.
So
Yes.
I'm back to the access points as
Yes.
well. So you said there's about 11 of them right now?
There's more than 11, but we knew that we wouldn't be able to maintain all of them, and many of them are not actually, they don't look like they're actively being used.
Now, most of them are. Now, out here, they have stairs that go up. Why can't we have stairs that go up and come down? Now, on a road or anything, people are going to do it anyway. Whether you give them access or not, people are going to climb over it. I have 4 kids. I'm not going to tell them to do it, but I'm sure I'm not going to tell them not to do it.
So, I don't know if you...
Swim right in front of the house.
Can you click back to
Every
that
time
one?
it's hot in the summer.
No.
And I'm not going to tell them they have to go 10 houses down. I'm going to say, go for it, kids.
Okay. So the vegetated berm is there for protection. The vegetation is there to protect the neighborhood. So what we've proposed with the regulators, and again, I'm saying we proposed it. They haven't approved it yet. They definitely didn't approve the 11 access points. That was a hard no. So our hands are tied.
I'm talking about going over it.
Right. This is what I'm explaining here. So right here where I say 3 maintenance points that will be reinforced to maintain the form. So those access points will not be vegetated, which means you can walk over it and it won't affect the integrity of the berm. If people choose, I'm just going to put it out here, if people choose to continue to not use the access points that are provided and just walk over the vegetated berm, it will compromise the berm. And it will compromise the resiliency of that, and it will compromise the flood risk reduction. So we're trying to meet everyone halfway. I completely understand that the access points are important, and you live on the water and you want to have access to it. We are wholeheartedly trying to make it as easy as possible.
With kayaks and everything else, park in the street, and they go right in.
So folks that are going to pull up and park there, we're hoping that they're going to take advantage of the new community boating center that is going to be built for the entire community, not just the Riverside community, so that they're going to be able to drive right in, pick up their kayak, and go straight down over the launch, which we can show you at that point there.
So you're taking 11 access points and knocking them down.
Correct.
That's ridiculous.
So the reason we're removing the access points is so that people won't get flooded. So, I mean, it's a toss-up. I mean, if folks in the neighborhood are not interested in having the resiliency of a berm and to stop that sunny day flooding and provide that kind of protection, that's the nuisance flooding.
Come up with a way to still give access, like a stairway over that won't interfere with anything, because people are going to do it anyway.
So there are going to be access points. They will not have...
You're dropping it by
Correct.
80%?
Correct. Like I said, we're not 100% there yet. We've been back and forth with the regulator. No, I agree with you, and this is why we have been fighting that battle with the regulators, without a doubt. I mean, you can ask anyone on the team about how many phone calls we've had about this and how many Zoom calls. So we appreciate that, okay? And we're trying to come up with a happy medium that we're able to provide everyone that lives there the same benefits and the same, just the great atmosphere of being able to use that space. We do recognize that. We might be able to get from 3 to 5. We might be able to negotiate those steps. I can't guarantee it to here, so I can't guarantee what the regulators will allow us to build.
Where the access points are going to be? And I'm making the assumption that the berm is going to be all the way down from the boatyard all the way to 1A.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, because that's the only way it will work. Because if we stop it at any given point, then you're basically, one of the major rules that we have to follow is do no harm, which is why we started with Gibson Park, and then we had to move over to the boatyard, and then we'll move over to Mills Ave, because any of these resiliency solutions, we don't want to cause a problem in another area. So this is not the be-all, end-all. This is a communication to all of you that live there about what we're doing, what we're proposing, what we've been through, what we're trying to get permitted. I hear you that maybe you want more, so we can take that back in our draft report and try to push a few more access points through so that you may only have to go like 1 street over or maybe like 10 houses down. But we won't really be able to have 10. We have, I don't think we have them here yet.
Well, the residents will be able to comment on DEIR.
Right.
And the more comments in favor of more access points to the regulatory agencies will show that there's support for these access points.
Okay.
So our cause and kind of.
May I ask?
Thank you.
Yes.
Who regulates this berm? Whose jurisdiction? Who regulates the berm?
Who maintains it?
Who maintains it? Who regulates it?
The public side,
Who polices it?
maintaining ours.
Who polices it? Who are we dealing with here?
I'm going to bring up the slide. Maybe.
Someday. I apologize. There we go.
Here we go.
So, I can't read that. but-
So, okay, so it is, I get in trouble because I always just give the acronyms for it, but we've had meetings with pretty much every state and federal regulatory agency that would impact this. So that's Massachusetts Coastal Zone Management, there's the Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries, Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, there is the Army Corps of Engineers, there's the US EPA, under Mass DEP, there are 3 different sections that regulate it. There's the Rear Conservation Commission, and I think that's a pretty good list.
So,
Yeah.
if I want to build a stairway over the berm and down to where I already had, I built my opening with my seat and my benches and my stairway, who's going to come and tell me I can't do that? Or who's going to tell me take that out or rip it out? Who do I have to deal with? Or anybody? Because this is a quagmire. I mean, they're all going to be talking to each other going, hey, he built that. Ooh.
But the berm's also only going to be 100 feet wide.
So if like this gentleman suggested, I built my own access.
Right.
People I don't even know all the time come and sit on my bench and look at the water, and it's lovely, okay? So if I want to, I get the berm, but if I want to build my own way over the berm, am I going to have a problem with the city of Revere?
So,
Because they're the only ones that ever come. Environmental police once in a while.
The operation management plan is to
So
direct this.
I'm going to try and summarize that just for everyone else and on Revere TV because they probably didn't hear you.
Okay.
His concern was he's already created a public access point. He has a bench on the riverside that he gets to use a lot, and he wants to know who of these regulatory agencies, or who, if he puts in some new access point, stairs or what have you, who would be the one enforcing it?
New,
Or
existing.
well, if the berm's there, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Technically speaking, when we did have the regulators here for the site walks, they were asking if any of the work that had been done was permitted, and I don't believe that it was, and Frank would be able to speak to this perhaps more than I, but basically all the work that's been done there, to my knowledge, has not been permitted, which means it's violating all of the regulations as put forth.
Yeah.
So technically speaking, it hasn't been enforced. However, it does not meet regulations.
Will there be a permitting process if I
Yes.
want to do this?
I'm sorry?
Will there be a permitting process should I want to do this?
Yeah, I mean, we're going through the permitting process now. Individually, it would have to be, the permit would have to be obtained by the city because it's actually city property.
Okay, thank you.
Ellie, can you just say something?
Yes.
Address some of this?
Yes, please.
I don't know your name, I don't know where you live.
I'm Mark. I live on Mills Ave.
Mills Avenue, which side? Next
Right
side.
next to
Like,
them.
oh, okay, all right. Who was the other one you?
Not me.
My neighbor.
You know where.
House gets flooded. Right. I get a lot of water. This is gonna help us.
I understand.
So, I mean, I totally understand not being able to get back over to the beach the way you do now. But this is gonna help us control the flood. You don't get water in the house.
I'm not going to destroy the berm. What we're talking about is live with the berm, but be able
Be
to
able
adjust
to live with it, not
Right,
adjust to it,
you
like a
don't
stairway
know.
over
See
it.
all those names up there?
I don't
You
care.
have no idea.
They don't
what
know what
the
they're
city is
doing.
going through to be able to get any of this stuff done. This,
I think the berm's a great idea.
Me too.
We just need to be able to get over it and use the river the way
They're giving us
we have
three,
it.
and hopefully if we make enough comments on the EIR, they'll give us more.
Okay.
The openings.
You said certain
But
parts of
they're
the berm are gonna have stone on them that.
Do we get to vote where we want the openings?
That is correct, yeah. At some of these access points, there
Do the
will be.
neighbors get a voice on where we want the openings?
Yes.
So we're all going together, you're gonna offer us three, can we tell you where we want them?
Yes, we could definitely, this is, like I said, this is not the be-all, end-all meeting. This is to inform everybody where we're at, to discuss the challenges that we, like I said, we started with wanting everybody to have access exactly like you do today. But they're not cooperating with allowing that to happen, and they have reasons, which we alluded to. One, protection, and in order for protecting the integrity of the berm, allowing that many access points throughout is not going to make it as resilient as it could be. And the whole point of building the berm is to provide resiliency. Okay?
So I
Yes.
Ever since I heard about this berm,
Yes.
it occurs to me that the water runs in and the water runs out. And when it runs in, it pushes whatever's there into the street, and when it runs out, it pushes it back into the river. How do you keep plants against the tide? How does that work?
It's a berm, it's like.
Well,
I know what a berm is, but
so for
I saw dogs floating down my street. It's dogs. How do you keep dirt in one place?
So the vegetation does provide a nature-based solution for resiliency. So, for example, many years ago, give a shout out to Donnie Tremella, who planted the beach grass over here on the beach side.
Yeah.
That has made the Point of Pines area much more resilient because that holds the soil together and it keeps it from eroding. So that's given us a huge buffer that we never would have had that not been planted 20 years ago. It will take some time for that vegetation to take root and to really become more of a protection. But at the same time, if we do nothing, you will just continue to be flooded.
They got stairs. They were able to build stairs.
So can I throw in just
Yeah,
a piece?
yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, just from the landscape architecture side. So in addition to the berms, there will be some pretty stout erosion control. Obviously, we've got to be able to stabilize that long enough for those plants and those root zones to be able to get stabilized to actually hold that together. So John mentioned earlier the idea of plugs, which I don't know if you plug, so I'm going to probably go into more detail, but they're essentially small little plants. They're probably like 2 by 2 squares would be their root zone. So it's much better than a seeded application. They're small enough, and we plant those at about 12 inches on center, kind of stagger rows, and essentially within the course of a year, ideally, if you get those in the spring, by fall, hopefully you're catching those before everything's starting to go dormant like it does like now. We've got a really good root system that's starting to hold that in place. But you definitely, it's a fair question. We need to make sure that that berm is stable enough and holds together and long enough for those roots to be able to take root and really kind of hold that place together.
So, hey,
Well, I mean, again, it just goes to, when we do the construction, it's really important for everybody to adhere to, we have to stay off of it. Just like we put up all this sand fencing over on this side here to keep people off the dunes, that's to protect it. So essentially, it's the same thing. It's just a vegetated berm because you don't have the width to be able to do a dune system like this on the riverside.
They also
Yep.
have to understand that this part here is completely different from Riverside. This is the Beach Association that pays for this. It's not the city. The city didn't pay for the walkways. The city did not pay for the stairs. It's the Beach Association. It's privately owned. So the Beach Association members are the ones who pay for it. So just so everyone knows,
Yeah.
I don't
That's
want
true.
to blame the city and say, okay, because they haven't paid, because more than one person said that. And I'm just saying that I'm the president of the Beach Association.
it's a totally different
I just
environment.
wanted to.
It is. I was just referring only really to the vegetation point and how that provides protection. Yes.
When it rains out, what's going to happen to the water that puddles up on the riverside of the berm? Where's that going to go? Where's that going to drain?
Turn that to you for more technical.
Yeah, so that's a great concern. The question was, when it rains with the berm up, what's going to happen to the water on the inside? So essentially, one of the big things we want to avoid is having a bathtub effect, where we're keeping the water out, but we're also not letting it get out where it goes. So that's why if we go back, this is going to take 4 hours, I apologize in advance. I had a slide in here that shows that we're going to take it to allow, in the northern part of Mills Ave, it'll go under the field. But also, as Frank just mentioned, as part of the berm work, we're going to be redoing, or the city is going to be redesigning all of the drainage within Mills Ave and on those collector streets. And so what one possibility is there, it's collected similar to over here on the Point of Pine side, would be a pump discharge system. So that way, even if it is below the tide, you can still push it out because you have enough, call it head, enough capacity, there's enough force behind it that it gets it out into the water. So that whole system along with the berm, the entire stormwater management infrastructure along Mills Ave will be redesigned to handle it so you don't have that bathtub effect, so the water does have a place to go.
So can I assume that Mills Ave is going to be repaved? Is there going to be drainage on that side?
So the question was, will Mills Ave be repaved and drainage? Yeah. So again, we'll be cutting off, there's going to be a significant amount of work done within Mills Ave because we're going to be cutting off 4 feet of pavement at a minimum along the western edge, but then to put in new pipes, new infrastructure, yes, most likely. It depends on how it lays out. I can't tell you if it'll be a full width pavement or if it'll just be trench paved, but there will be work within Mills Ave that will affect it. And I'm going to, there we go. Finally got there.
Sorry, are there any questions on Zoom? No. Okay.
So
Back to the room.
Question about
Okay, 1 second. There's a gentleman behind you. I just want to give somebody else an opportunity.
Cost for the project?
So the question was about the cost for the project. So it's until we really get the permits from the regulators, because what happens when you get those permits, they put in a lot of restrictions and conditions that you have to add in. It's really way too premature to give a cost projection on that because there's so many factors that will change it and could affect it. So I mean, it would be too premature to tell you anything. I tell you right now.
So there are no projection on the cost? So you're undertaking this project without any projection on cost? Who's paying for this project?
So the question is, well, two parts. We're doing this work without cost projection, and who's paying for it? So.
We do have some cost projections, and we've already, at the moment, secured $6.5 million, and we have grants pending for another $4 million. So we are in the process of actively seeking funding from multiple resources, and we will continue to apply for grants. And
So this is going to be paid totally by grants?
so far, yes.
I'm sorry?
So far, yes, it has been.
Part of it?
So far, the $6 million and the $4 million are all
Okay, so.
grant
we're talking
funds.
about $10 million.
Yes.
So your projections are that this will cost $10 million?
I'm not going to speak to an answer on that until we're through the permitting process, because there are many elements that could fluctuate and change. So at this point, I'm not going to
Is any money
be able to.
Any money coming from the city?
There may be at one point, yes, potentially. But at the moment, what I've just mentioned is we've secured $6.5 million worth of grants, and another $4 million are in the pipeline.
Maybe John can you elaborate on that?
Councilor Powers?
I can tell you now that just recently, this year, we received a $2 million from Congresswoman Clark's office, specifically for the berm.
Correct.
I have one question, though, before we get out of this. It's my understanding that the roundabout was built to keep traffic off of Mills Avenue. That was one of the reasons, right?
Correct.
And then I hear a gentleman over here say, well, what if somebody comes in with a kayak and parks it on Mills Avenue? What I'm looking to do is to have resident parking only on Mills Avenue, or parking for deliveries of, groceries or things like that. And all vehicle traffic going into that facility, going in through the roundabout.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now, with the road being reduced to 22 feet, there's not going to be any more any parking.
Yeah. So with the road being reduced to 22 feet, we're losing
Yes.
4 feet of the road.
Correct.
Has anybody thought about snow plowing and what it's going to be like in the winter?
Where are they
And where's all the snow going to go?
They push it over the
It
guardrail.
goes over the guardrail into the river.
Maybe it shouldn't be there, but historically that's where I found snow.
Yeah, technically, I don't think that's
So, yeah,
allowed.
don't get it going.
Yeah.
So, is there an answer?
Do I have an answer where the snow removal is going to go?
No, we're losing 4 feet of road, right?
Correct.
So it's going to be 4 feet thinner.
Right.
And has anybody thought about what happens in the winter when they plow the snow?
The street will be more narrow, correct?
4 feet narrow now.
Correct.
Now it snows.
Yes.
How much more narrow is the street going to be? And has anybody pushed? I mean, can we get a special provision that they'll come down and make it better?
I don't know why, I guess I'm missing the question, why it would be any different if it's 26 feet or 22 feet, why the snow removal is going to be any different.
4 feet to put the snow that they plow off the road.
Oh, you're saying, okay.
Yeah.
All
They
right.
basically bury the guardrail in snow.
Yeah.
Now where's it gonna go if there's a berm there?
And there's 4 feet less to put it.
Yeah.
But isn't that the same as walking over the berm? Putting all that snow on top?
So I'm just, maybe somebody should say, okay, maybe in the winter we have to go look at Mills Avenue and make sure people can drive down the street because it's 4 feet more narrow and now it's 2 feet more narrow because we have 2 feet of snow, so now we have 6 foot less roadway.
Right. There are a lot of streets in the city that are a lot more narrow than Mills Avenue, and none of these decisions were made without consultation of the Traffic Commission and the DPW, and Frank's here from the Traffic Commission, and I don't know if you want to speak to that.
My only suggestion, I'm not criticizing, believe me, I'm only saying, maybe someone should...
We didn't not consider that the road's going to be more narrow, and that's going to, cause some other workarounds that may need to take place, without a doubt, absolutely. But with change comes more changes. So we have to adapt to whatever that situation is going to be. So if that means maybe we have to move some of that snow to the parking lot. I mean, we're going to have an access point on Thayer Ave that is only emergency access. Could we remove that and put snow into 2 of the parking spaces? Sure. I mean, those are workarounds that are feasible workarounds. Would we want it to be bury the new berm that we just built? No, that probably wouldn't be the solution. So yes, absolutely. It's a good point that you raise, and there may need to be a different workaround other than burying the current guardrails. Have we got to that level of detail, what we're going to do with the snow on, the 5 or 6 storms that we, really need a place to put that? It's an option that we could put it in the parking lot.
It needs to be considered.
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt.
Okay.
Good point.
This woman up front's been really patient. She keeps raising her hand.
Please go right ahead.
Thank you. I actually have a question about the boathouse. So, the windows looking out the Thayer Ave look right at my house. Are they clear windows that people are going to be staring at my house? Question 1. I have a number of questions, but also the bathroom and office situation. I would love it if you would flip that, because the high traffic area is going to be to the bathrooms, and I'm going to hear flushing into a swim and people walking all day long. I feel like you're asking us to absorb a lot with light and noise and exposure for your design. Unless those windows are like blurred and people don't see out.
So we haven't, the question was about the transparency of the windows. We haven't determined the full transparency, whether they're, how reflective they are, whether they're fritted. All of that is still to be determined, and we'll definitely consider that and how open they actually are, because they will be kind of floor to ceiling. So there's opportunity for them to close them inside currently, but we'll also consider opportunity from exterior as well to limit that view.
And in the bathrooms?
The bathrooms, I promise you will not be able to hear any flushing within. They'll be deep inside the building.
I'm going to have people's feet on that wood all the time, and they're going to be going to that side of the building that's going to echo in our house. If you just flip-flop them, like how many people go in the office? Like 2 or 3 people?
The 3 entrances for the building are to the bathrooms, of course, which are on Thayer Ave. The other entrance is to the community space, and that will be where the main entrance, where everybody will be coming in. I'm anticipating there will be less traffic to the restrooms in reference versus the main entrance.
Cattle feed through that. It's going to be occasional, but this is going to be all day, every day.
We'll look at the distances between and make sure there is a little bit of a wing wall as well sticking out from the door, so that you can't see it from more than 90 degrees. But we'll check the distances between that and potentially at least flip the restroom walls and see.
No.
No, definitely not.
No. It's really just for if there's a larger event being held at the park or otherwise, but they are not going to be open 24 hours a day. Absolutely not.
And will there be light pouring out that window? I know you said there's going to be an option for shade, but
24 hours. All the lights will be on a control system, so there'll be timers and kind of more complex than in your residential home, and they'll be able to turn off at night, or there may be security in the vestibule, but what's coming out of the windows will not be abrasive at all.
okay. Well, it's really beautiful, but I hope you'll consider that.
Definitely. Thank you.
Appreciate the feedback.
Can I
Elaine.
ask a question? You said the berms are going to be as high as the Ave.
Yes.
At the end of River Avenue, the tide comes higher than the Ave.
So how,
So the question was about the height of the guardrail. So that's just a visual perspective. So the road obviously isn't flat, it undulates, and River Ave is the lowest point on Mills Ave, so that's why it goes above the guardrail where it is. So it's going to be a constant elevation 10.3. So to give that in perspective, it's at Rivers Ave, it'll probably be about 3.5 feet higher than the existing grade over there.
It's going to be a little bit higher than.
So the berm, perspective-wise, yeah, visually it'll look higher. It'll all be, you know, if you look at it straight across, it'll be flat, but it's going to be shorter in some parts and higher in some parts because it's got to match the grade of the existing roadway.
But the elevation will be consistent.
Yeah, it'll be the same elevation across so that no one's more vulnerable or more protected.
So in some places, so if it's only, say it's 8 feet at one point and 9 feet at the other point, so there will be a variation of how tall the vegetation is, but at the end of the day, it will all meet the same elevation. So yes, to your point, it will be over the guardrail and slightly over in that situation, at that elevation.
Did you say it was going to be a 4-foot wall where Thayer meets Mills at the boatyard?
The question was, did I say it was a 4-foot wall where Thayer meets Mills of the boatyard? There will be, no, it will not be 4 feet high. So it's just where the lowest perspective is. I think the lowest point of the roadway is elevation 6.8, and the top of the berm is 10.3.
No, I'm not talking about the berm. I'm driving down Mills Ave.
Yes.
Going towards the boatyard. Right now, there's a chain across it where the city yards are there.
Yeah.
If the chain's down, I can drive right into the area in
Right.
front of the boatyard.
Right.
What's going to be there?
What's going to be there? Okay.
Yeah.
So, so that's going to be, there's actually a profile of it, but if you're driving straight down Mills Ave into the side area here, actually, can you go, there's one that goes profile, yeah, you'll see it. You're going to have, sorry. No.
You had it.
Yeah, that's fine, I could work with that one. So, so you're going to, if you drive right down, we're still going to have those bollards that are there, but you're going to have the deck that's coming out, I think about 16 feet.
But see what, back up your finger.
Yep.
See the pale yellow? Isn't that where Mills ends and Thayer?
Yes.
Back up, the little pointer there, back it up,
Yep.
back towards you, right there.
Yeah.
So, right now, I can drive right through there into the area.
Yep.
What's going to be there at the end of Mills Ave where it meets there?
So in this direction here.
Yeah.
That's going to be the at-grade, that's going to be the only at-grade intersection. So you're going to still be able to drive back down there and get out there. So it'll be reinforced. It'll be,
people from driving in there and parking.
if they leave it too long, they're going to get flooded by the tide, because it's a beach area.
I think what you're saying is if you're heading in the direction northbound on Mills Avenue, heading towards that access, you won't be able to drive there at all.
That's this access in here.
That's going to be closed off. I'm gonna advance to the next slide. So basically, in front of the boatyard is going to be a sheet piling.
Here we go.
That's
Yes. So this is, you're driving north, you know, if you're coming into the page north, and that's there right there. So this is Mills right here. So you're going to have those existing bollards right here. You're going to have the berm along here. You're going to have the sheet pile wall on here, and you're going to have this deck that's built out from here.
What's a sheet pile?
So it's a steel wall. It's thin sheets of steel, like a bulkhead. Yeah, you would see like on a shoreline structure.
And where does that stop?
So that stops at the edge of, if you extend Thayer Ave out. So that stops like kind of right along the, if you just run a straight line along the edge of the building, you would, right there.
But it's going to go around in front, right?
And then it would go north up from there. Yeah, so it goes underneath the deck. So that's why I'm saying you wouldn't really see it except for this small section in here where the jog is, but it's along this profile. It's this area right in here, and then it goes underneath the deck and wings around.
What keeps water from coming down this way? The way that, like, why can't water go under that deck and come right down?
Because so all this elevation is higher.
Okay.
So from the north side, you're protected just by the grading. It's really when you get down here where everything's lower. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any questions on Zoom, Daria? No. Okay. Any other questions? This is great. This is exactly
Yeah,
what we
thank you guys for all the feedback. Absolutely.
I know it's been like a long and a lot of questions, so I just want to thank everyone for hanging with us. Thank you. Appreciate it. We hope that we've addressed all your questions, perhaps not all your concerns at the moment, but we did want to have this opportunity for a check-in to let everyone know. I mean, obviously, we have been working diligently on a lot of different variables. So we're glad to report back where we're at as we continue to move through the process. As Frank mentioned, and thank you for mentioning that, there will be another opportunity for comment from all of you with the regulators. So that's a perfect opportunity. If you're looking for different types of access points, you're not happy with what's being allowed, that's a perfect time to bring that up. It may give us some more leverage to be able to offer a little bit more than we think that we're at right now with the regulators, having being able to hear directly from the folks that are living there. So, and I also just want to give a shout out also for everybody that has offered letters of support to continue the funding that we continue to keep applying for. Sorry to not really address that question about the budget, but really, you know, as we move through, one option versus another option can have a vastly different consequence in regards to price. So I don't want to set any expectations unrealistically until we're a little bit further down the road and we have more of a stamp of approval, if you will, so we know exactly the direction we're going. Insofar as the actual boathouse itself from Design Lab, we're still working on that plan. This is a conceptual design plan right now. It's not set in stone either. Like many of the things that we have here, these are conceptual designs where we think that we're able to go based on all of the research that we've done. So there is an opportunity for, you know, minor adjustments. Materials haven't been selected yet. We'll definitely be having another meeting to talk more in detail about that information. So with that, no other questions. I just want to I want to thank all our consultants. Yeah.
You said letters of support?
Yeah, so
somewhere we can send those?
Yes, so yeah, absolutely. So next time we apply for a grant fund, if you're interested in providing a letter of support to help us fund the project, it can often go a long way just to say, you know, you're in support of the project, you would like this to be funded. A lot of times grantors like to see that the residents are interested and want us to move forward with a particular project. For example, when we use park grants, which we use throughout the city, we always try to have a couple neighborhood folks, if they're interested in the renovation of the park moving forward, they write a letter of support in order to recognize that they want that to go forward.
How do we know when?
Yeah, if you're interested, I'll reach out to you. Careful what you wish for. So, yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I want to thank all of our speakers here today. If you could all just wave your hands. Everyone's been working really hard on this, so we appreciate your feedback, and hopefully we'll be able to make some adjustments to make everyone more amenable to the process. But at the end of the day, we're trying to provide as much resiliency as we can and the co-benefit of recreation for many people in the community as well. So we hear your concerns. We'll take them back. We'll take them into consideration. And like I said, you know, we're working with regulators that sometimes, you know, we can only go so far. So if that's your opportunity to be able to weigh in, we appreciate you doing so. All right. So with that, thank you, everyone. Have a great night, and thanks for sticking with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.